Okay, Jeff here. I'm going to show you what I think is a difficult planing situation, and I'm always advocating that you hand plane, and I advocate using hand tools a lot. I have a hybrid shop, and I've been making my living from carpentry for 35 years, and for about 26 of those years I've made furniture and cabinets, and I understand the pressures of production and trying to get a piece done and meet a deadline and get paid. I still nevertheless advocate a lot of hand tool use, and I have other videos where I talk about it more, and rather than go into another rant about that, I think it's more beneficial to say, okay, if you're going to use hand tools and you encounter problems just like you do with power tools, how do you solve those problems? So one of the problems that I want to talk to you about is planing little dinky pieces of wood, especially ones that get long enough that you're dealing with flex. If you have a little dinky piece of wood and you have high quality vices, you know, you can clamp a piece like this, little thin piece, it's less than a half an inch. You can clamp it in there and you probably can plane it. You could put it in the tail vise. I use an Eclipse vise, quick release vise, as a tail vise, and I have it in a kind of a weird spot, and I talk about that in another video where I do a tour of my shop and my bench, and you could watch that and see what I'm talking about. But I make the claim that this setup works great. Well, I think that should be substantiated. Anyhow, I've got this leg vise. It's a good setup, and if I have to clamp the piece, a smallish piece will go in there, and you could take a plane. You got to watch. There's still some flex, but you could take a plane and cut perfect shavings, and you can make that work. I picked a fairly easy piece naturally to demonstrate this. I haven't picked the hardest piece you could pick. A lot of times when you're planing, you don't need anything. You just put it on the bench and go. And I talk about in another video, and I'm going to talk about it here, about the use of a stop. And I don't mean a dinky little bench dog. I don't mean dinky little squares that you see embedded in benches and all that. I'm talking about making yourself proper stops. This is 3/4 by 1/4. You can put it in the vise, clamp it down. Usually the 1/4 is what I turn up, and then you can even float that for thicker pieces of wood, and then all the way down for thin pieces of wood, and then you have a stop and you've got some surface area there. That's a simple stop, and it'd be practically speaking just like what this is doing right now. Set it on the bench, it's supported, make your cut, it doesn't move around. With good planing technique, you'll get perfect shavings, especially in a perfect piece of wood. So that's one method. No clamping, quick. It's just the way to go. Now, what about as the piece gets longer, this starts moving around on you, and that becomes a problem. And the moment you have anything in the way, you can't plane. I mean, I like to plane backwards to forwards. You'll take a cut, you're good to here, you take another cut and lift and feather off. So and it works. As you get going, on some pieces, this will move around on you, and it's a struggle. Or with some planes, or some people, the way they plane, they cut and then they drag back, and that's okay. I'm not necessarily against that, but sometimes it pulls the piece. And so I'm just trying to help people who are looking for solutions to hold the work. And so what I've got is a slightly different version of the plane stop, like this. You can make different sizes and thicknesses. This is a 1/2 inch. top piece, 3/4 piece. I like something with some beef to it that clamps nice. And then you remove the wedge, you cut out that wedge and remove it. And then, if you can tell, where it was here, I have shortened the nose of that wedge and I've narrowed it. So that now there's a place for the piece to go, and then this goes in and wedges a number of thicknesses of wood. And then I can go half and taller with this piece, slightly over half and taller with this piece. So for 3/4, 5/8, 1-inch pieces that are narrow and flexible and don't lend themselves to clamping real well, stick them in this and put them on the bench top. And this holds it still. And a lot of times as your skills get better and better, you may not need this. Like I was making this work. But not everybody can do that right off the bat. Also, when this was cut, if you could see, this was cut on a bevel, this piece here. There's a bevel there. So as it goes in, it's locked. It won't come up. It can't fall out or move out. So then this is the same thing, only with 1/4 inch. And so I was doing a project with thin little slats. I wanted that same pretty surface that I'm stubborn about getting with a hand plane. I wanted it on those little slats, and it's like, how do I hold those to do it? Well, like I said, in some pieces, perfect piece of wood. You know, oak isn't so easy. The grain, even with the grain, it grips you and can fight you. And I'll show you a piece in a minute. But anyhow, you clamp this in here. Now you have to decide when you make this what kind of range of size you're going to work with. This isn't going to work. So the simple solution is take another little block, something thinner, this block here, something thinner, and pad that out. Now your clamp will work. And a lot of times I barely bump that. I just take the plane sometimes and bump it. Now this is not coming out. You can flex it a little this way, but it's not going to yank out of there from planing if you tap it in there. So right there, this is not coming out from planing. You can push it tighter, it's just harder to get out. But this is not going to yank out from the planing action. You could slide this out if it's more comfortable for you, like this. You could have it all the way to the edge if you wanted it, and it'll work. I said in another video that I'm not convinced of the conventional thinking on the placement of the vices. This isn't conventional thinking for a right-hander. This one is, and ironically in this setup, as good as it is, this could well be down at the other end and might even be handier, because then it's not in my way here for this operation. So maybe I should say it this way: if you could only have one vise and you're a right-handed person, stick the vise here, whatever it is, and I would highly suggest this Eclipse quick release vise, because you do have the dogging ability for larger fat pieces of wood, and put your dogs in, clamp it down, and it holds it that way. That solves that problem. And you've got your normal vise, and you can cut off the end, and so many other beneficial sides to this. And the only downside at the moment is this could be considered a little bit in the way. So down here might actually be better. But this works good, good enough, and you can plane no issues. The same thing for thin pieces on edge. You know, if you have to pad out with a bigger padding, then find yourself padding that allows you to lock this in place. I don't know if I have anything handy here. I might, probably not, but you could pick something fatter that does the job for you. Let me show you a piece of oak. And again, would be a real struggle to plane this out in any other way than what I'm showing you on top of the bench. By the way, why can't you just put this between the dogs, clamp it in and go? Well, what happens is it tends to want to flex, bend up. Then you're pushing down, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. You can try that. The other thing I don't like about that is this dog. There's something that irks me about having the metal that close to me planing through there. So you better make sure it's down enough, and that's fine, and if it works for you, great. I'm just saying this is an old method that works pretty good. This could go in, by the way, if we wanted to see this work. Here's the kind of piece I was saying. Drive this in, and now this setup can work on edge, and it's supported the whole way. There's a full-length shaving. So that's enough for this piece. Let's try the oak, and this particular jig is not going to work with this unless I get padding for the oak, which I could do like this. It even gets tight quick, so I like pushing it all the way in, and this all the way that it will go, and then the wedge. Now, I should have checked the grain. You want to read the grain before you're all set up, because if you're going against the grain, it's a struggle. I think I'm good to go the way I am, but it's not uncommon. You stick it in, get it all ready to go, and then you find out you're against the grain. So try to read your grain, then lock it in the jig, and then go. Good sharp plane, but super hard wood, super grained wood, and could be a struggle to plane without holding it solidly. It's a struggle anyway, but take a jack plane and try it. My camera's not good enough to show you. This is just glistening. I mean, it is glass smooth. So as awkward as I look sometimes when I'm playing, I look at myself and I think, gee, that looks awkward. It's not that awkward. And I'm just telling you, this is a way to hold work that you can consider trying it yourself for thin, flexible pieces, and this will get you in business. It has to do with how your bench is set up, kind of vise you have, and so forth. But chances are you can find a way to do this. If you don't have a tail vise here, and this is an argument to have one, because I hear a lot of talk about, oh, you don't need a tail vise, don't bother with it, just get one vise, you're done. If that is your situation, then make up this scenario that clamps in here. I use a stop, just a plain big plate stop for various uses all the time, and a lot of times I stick it in here like this. And I'll use a hold fast, and when I'm doing dovetailing, I'll set the pieces here, slide this to where a hold fast will work here, pin the piece down, and when I'm chopping, I'm not chopping into my bench, I'm chopping into a sacrificial piece. And I use this all the time this way. Well, you could cut this same wedge system in a board like this and do everything I'm showing you here. You just wouldn't have the adjustment this way. So you want to think about what are you trying to do here and find your comfortable spot, and then rig this up if the only vise you have is a face vise. And then this would be an excellent system for that. And it's excellent anyway to make that up and have pieces that you can use this as a stop. You can use this to chop on. I axe on this if I'm doing something rough with an axe and want to maybe carve a spoon or something. A lot of things that I do here. I sharpen on this sometimes. Usually not, but you can. I don't like getting the mess on the bench, so it's kind of like a sacrificial bench top. You could put padding on this. You could, again, you could mortise on this, and if you're doing through mortises, put your hold fast in here, and you could have a bigger piece of wood than this, but you could have your work fastened in here and chopped mortises in here, and it's just a protection to tearing up the bench. The bench is going to get tore up anyway. You made it to use it and so forth, but there's no reason to blatantly tear up your bench. So this is a good idea anyway. And like I say, if you don't have a tail vise, then you can make this work, and you make this system, this whole system work. You could make up a giant version of this and have 2 layers to it. Have a fence. You could have another fence here if you don't have a stop system in your center rail of your bench like this one is, or some way to do a stop system. There's no end to the possibilities of what you can do with it. So this is just food for thought. I push hand tools so much, and I think people like me should offer more ideas on how you hold the work, because hand tools necessitate holding the work. They just do. That's the thing that turns people off. If you're just sanding, you can grip the piece and sand it and flip it around and sand it, and you're the work holding. But you can't do that with planes. You can't do that with chisels. You can't do that. If you do it with a chisel and you're doing something, I guarantee you'll cut yourself. Have I done that? You better believe it. So sharpening, you will cut yourself if you don't hold your stones well. So a board like this could have your stones on it, or a way that locks your diamond plates or your sharpening stones in it. So a lot of things that you can do with this concept, and it may be out there and I haven't seen it, but if not, then I'm throwing it out there and something for you to consider. So thank you for watching.